Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
All right, welcome back to the David Pakman Show. Several new members I want to say hello to. New members of the family, the David Pakman Show, Progressive Mafia, new consigliere, Sam Bergeron. And I can't even count, Lewis, the number of new associates. Terry B., Vicky W., James V., Bill B., Ann T., Sean H., Kevin Baker, and Craig Warner. It's unbelievable, Lewis. The Progressive Mafia is becoming very, very strong. I don't know. I don't even know what it's compared to, but...
Be careful. Don't brag. We don't want to scare the feds.
That's right. Fortunately, nobody in the Progressive Mafia that I know of wrapped up in that recent arrest of 120 mobsters.
We got to keep this on the down low.
This is a good mafia. No racketeering, no loan sharking going on. I've got a bunch of conservative media nonsense to tell you about and to play for you here. Let's go first to Rush Limbaugh. Now, Rush Limbaugh is known for kind of more, for lack of a better term, more adult xenophobia and racism, the kind that we would hear from, I don't know, adults, not from children. But he now has resorted to a different type of xenophobia. And this is the type of xenophobia where you actually just mock the way people speak, so the way certain languages sound. And this relates to Hu Jintao, who gave a speech in the U.S. Here's Rush Limbaugh with his analysis. And believe me, I use the term analysis very loosely here. Let's see what Rush Limbaugh had to say.
Watching the news conference, Hu Jintao is speaking with no translator. They wait till he finishes. And then they read what he says in toto. And of course, we don't know. Translator could be making it all up. When I hear Chinese or Japanese, it sounds like all the same word. And I can't comprehend of anybody understanding it.
He can't comprehend of anybody understanding that. Nobody could possibly understand what that guy's saying, other than the 1.5 billion people who speak that language, which is almost 1 out of 4. You just take 4 random people. Not random, obviously, if you go to Spain, it's not going to be 1 out of 4, but on this planet, almost 1 out of 4 people would actually understand what he's saying. But Rush Limbaugh can't imagine how anybody would understand that. No big deal, right? He's just saying he didn't understand it. But then he goes on, very, very adult, very highbrow comedy here. So Rush Limbaugh's hilarious, Lewis. Who would have thought of just making fun of the way Chinese sounds? It's brilliant comedy.
Yeah.
So what we see here, ladies and gentlemen, normally, like I said, Rush's xenophobia is a more advanced adult level. He's now demonstrating behavior we normally see in 4th graders who are just learning to hate people that are different from themselves. We are now seeing Rush Limbaugh moved back to childish xenophobia, the kind that people who later in life become very racist and different and xenophobic. We're now hearing that from Rush Limbaugh.
So how can anybody take this guy seriously? Take anything this guy says seriously after that?
Well, that's the question. We're taking the word of people who are making the fun of how Chinese sounds, that their own violent rhetoric isn't affecting real world violence. We're taking their own word for it. The same people who are just making fun of what Chinese sounds like. We've also uncovered the Glenn Beck shoot him in the head video. You'll notice in the swastika, if you're watching on TV, swastika in the background. And here is the infamous video that for a while, conservatives were hoping would not be uncovered.
The radicals that you in Washington have co-opted and brought in wearing sheep's clothing, change the pose, you get the ends. You've been using them? They believe in communism. They believe and have called for revolution. You're going to have to shoot them in the head. But warning, they may shoot you.
Right. So there's Glenn Beck. So we hear this clip where he's actually talking about people shooting each other in the head. He just really, from this video, he really just appears to be disturbed. He does seem to be. I'm concerned. I'm honestly concerned for Glenn Beck. I'm not playing concern troll. It is disturbing behavior what I'm seeing here. The defense of this I'm hearing is that no. This wasn't actual violent rhetoric. Glenn Beck was talking about Democrats shooting other Democrats in the head for not being liberal enough. Oh, good. I apologize. I misunderstood. I didn't know that this was all about Democrats. Move along. Nothing to see here. Even though the collective amnesia of the nation has been the MO, the hopeful MO of the conservative media and Republicans, fortunately, Lewis, the internet doesn't forget. And if you need more evidence that Glenn Beck's rhetoric is actually affecting real life, Frances Fox Piven is a sociology professor at City University of New York Graduate Center. She is now receiving death threats because Glenn Beck has blamed her many times for being responsible for economic problems. Frances Fox Piven, his theory is she's responsible for economic problems in the U.S. This is based on a book from 1966 called The Weight of the Poor, A Strategy to End Poverty. And now she's getting actual real-life death threats. This is not fake death threats. I don't even know what kind of death threats there are. This is yet another instance. We've got Byron Williams, but we're hearing people denying that. All the Tides Foundation threats. Glenn Beck couldn't possibly have anything to do with that, even though he's the only one talking about the Tides Foundation. Well, now Frances Fox Piven, an elderly woman, is receiving death threats because she's the target of Glenn Beck. Par for the course. No big deal. Can't say I'm surprised. Is this at all surprising? This is what we've been talking about literally for years at this point.
No, but can you really blame Glenn Beck? If all he does is talk to her, hear me out. If all he does is talk about her and say she's responsible for economic problems,
right?
Can you really blame him?
If that's all he does, then no. But that's not all he's doing. He is using incendiary language. He is using the type of rhetoric that is drawing people to write her death threats. Let me give you an example. On this show, I just talked about Rush Limbaugh, okay? I criticized Rush Limbaugh. I said why I think what he's doing is wrong, why it's xenophobic, and why I don't like Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
Did I use language that is going to get our audience to write Rush Limbaugh death threats?
We don't know.
Has it ever happened before that we are aware of? And believe me, we would have been contacted if we saw that evidence. No. The language that is being used by Glenn Beck is not, ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply concerned about the country, and I want to point out to you points A, B, and C very rationally of why I believe Frances Fox Piven is in part responsible for this. No, we are using incendiary language. This woman is all of a sudden the problem and caused the downfall of the United States economy. How can we even compare what is going on to rational criticisms that we see in other parts of the media? I think it's a bogus comparison, if I do say so myself, Lewis.
I think what needs to be done is Glenn Beck needs to address this and address to his fans and listeners that he does not condone any type of violence or any type of threats. Do you think that will ever happen? I
think he may have alluded to something like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, hinting at it is not, for a split second while going on some tirade is not what I'm talking about here.